Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. When we think about corporate auditing, it's super easy to just picture endless compliance checklists and, well, a lot of boredom. But today, we're completely reframing that. We're going to look at the auditor as a kind of financial detective. They are literally the frontline defense keeping our global economy from just collapsing under fraud and manipulation. And it all kicks off with one absolutely massive, crucial question. How do you actually prove a multi-million-dollar company isn't lying to you? I mean, when a massive corporation publishes their financial statements, claiming they've made huge profits and hold billions in assets, we obviously can't just take their word for it, right? That's where our financial detectives step in. They've got to search for clues and piece together a giant puzzle. And the catch? Some of those pieces might be intentionally hidden.
To pull this off, they use a highly specific methodology. So, here's our investigator's toolkit for today. First, the art of audit sampling. Second, verifying the hard facts. Third, spotting patterns and anomalies. Fourth, going beyond the balance sheet. And finally, evaluating the internal defenses.
All right, let's dive into Section 1, the art of audit sampling, or choosing the right clues. Think about it like this. A crime scene investigator can't possibly put every single blade of grass from a field under a microscope, right? Well, in the exact same way, an auditor can't examine millions of individual receipts. It's just impossible. So they rely on audit sampling. This simply means applying audit procedures to less than 100% of items within a class of transactions. But here is the key detail. Every single unit must have a chance of being selected. This concept is the absolute foundation of the audit. It lets our detective be incredibly efficient with their time while still gathering enough solid evidence to form a really airtight conclusion about the entire mountain of data. Now, you might be thinking this is all just driven by cold, hard algorithms. But check out this really fascinating quote from our source text. It says, "Auditing has never been a mathematical discipline, and the highly developed intuition has always been a more valuable audit attribute." Wow, that completely shatters the whole illusion of auditors as just boring bean counters, doesn't it? A financial detective's greatest weapon isn't actually a calculator, it's their human intuition. And this perfectly sets up the two main approaches our detectives actually use. On one hand, we've got statistical sampling. This uses random selection and probability theory to objectively measure risk. It's the math side. But on the other hand, we have judgmental or non-statistical sampling, and this relies heavily on the auditor's own experience. It's basically their sixth sense, letting them handpick specific, high-risk, or just kind of suspicious items. So while statistical sampling is mathematically precise, judgmental sampling empowers the auditor to use that intuition we just talked about. They can zero in on the exact anomalies that a random computer program would probably just breeze right past. If you're analyzing a company's risk, realizing that auditors blend cold statistics with gut instinct is a total game changer. Moving right along to Section 2, verifying the hard facts, which is basically the exploratory surgery of the audit. This brings us to what's known in the biz as substantive testing. Like I said, think of it as exploratory surgery. Look, a company can easily just type $10 million in inventory on a spreadsheet to make their profits look amazing. But to prove that asset actually exists, the detective literally has to go to the warehouse. Just look at the procedure here. First, they review the client's instructions. Then, they observe the physical count. They physically segregate damaged or obsolete items, the stuff that's no longer worth what the spreadsheet says it is. And finally, they reconcile what's actually sitting in that warehouse with the final accounting sheets. This physical, boots-on-the-ground reality check is exactly what stops companies from just inventing assets out of thin air. Okay, Section 3, spotting patterns and anomalies. Let's read the vitals. So this is where we step back from counting physical boxes and start reading the vital signs to see if the business's overall behavior actually makes sense. We do this using analytical procedures. Our source defines this as evaluating information by studying plausible relationships among both financial and non-financial data. To put it simply, if a company claims their sales revenue absolutely doubled this year, but their shipping costs and warehouse square footage stayed exactly the same, yeah, that relationship isn't plausible at all. We're basically comparing expected reality with actual results, just hunting for any weird deviations that scream, hey, look closer at this. And it's wild how visually obvious a red flag can be. Just look at this gross profit margin chart. See that massive, totally unexplained spike in year 2? Year 1 is steady, completely normal. Then suddenly, bam, year 2 shoots straight up. Now, unless there's a really logical business reason for this, like maybe a massive drop in raw material costs, a spike like this is a dead giveaway that the numbers might be artificially manipulated. It absolutely requires immediate, aggressive scrutiny.
Next up, Section 4, Beyond the Balance Sheet. Get ready for the plot twists.
You see, a financial investigation doesn't just neatly end the second the paperwork is tallied. There's this highly sensitive, kind of dangerous timeline called the subsequent events window. Let's break it down. Day 1 is the year-end date. That's when the books supposedly close, but those financial statements might not be officially approved and published until, let's say, day 60. So what happens if a total disaster strikes on day 30? Well, our source highlights two types of events here. Adjusting events, which give us evidence of conditions that actually existed back at year-end, and non-adjusting events, which are completely brand new conditions. I mean, if a major warehouse suddenly burns down, or a massive client declares bankruptcy right in the middle of this window, that can completely alter the reality of the financial statements the public is about to see.
And the absolute ultimate plot twist an auditor can uncover here? Questioning the going concern basis. Now, going concern is just the basic assumption that the business will actually survive for the next year. But check out this list of severe danger symptoms from our source text. When an auditor uncovers things like loan defaults, sky-high debt-to-equity ratios, relying on short-term finance just to keep the lights on, or the sudden loss of key customers, well, they're basically discovering that the company is on life support. Spotting these symptoms means our financial detective has realized this business might literally not survive another 12 months. All right, bringing it home with Section 5, Evaluating the Internal Defenses. This is the pyramid base.
Think about this. An external auditor is only really poking around for a few weeks a year. So how on earth does a company police itself for the other 11 months? The answer is internal control. This is the entire system set up by management to run the business efficiently, safeguard its assets, and secure accurate records. Honestly, this is the very foundation of financial truth. If a company's internal controls are rock solid, the risk of fraud drops significantly. But if they're weak, well, the entire financial structure is basically built on sand.
So it is absolutely crucial to understand these key defenses. And the most vital one by far is the segregation of duties. Seriously, no single person should ever be responsible for initiating, authorizing, executing, and recording a transaction. Think about it. If one person can do all of that from start to finish, they can easily steal money and completely cover their tracks. We're also looking for physical custody, which means literally locking up physical assets and securing passwords. Throw in strict authorization limits and active management supervision, and you've got a solid defense. Without these basic internal checkpoints, the risk of internal fraud just skyrockets, and it makes the auditor's job of finding the truth nearly impossible. So we've explored how the auditor really acts as a detective, right? They use sampling, physical verification, behavioral patterns, and internal system checks to dig up the real financial truth. But all of this leaves us with one final, pretty profound thought to consider. Even with the absolute perfect audit, with airtight statistical sampling and absolutely flawless internal controls, can we ever truly be 100% certain of a company's future? Or, as our source material heavily suggests, does the ultimate control against deception always come back to the enduring power of human judgment and our own intuition? Definitely something to think about the next time you're reading a big corporate headline. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the numbers.